Gardner, Kansas. Call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everyone. We've got a full crowd tonight. It's good to see. All right, we have a couple presentations this evening, and our first presentation is from Johnson County. This will be a presentation on the proposed Homeless Services Center, and I believe council has some information in front of them to look through the coordinated entry system. So if you'd like to come forward and you can state your name, how are we doing tonight? Hi, Bear.
So my name is Joe Connor. I'm one of the assistant county managers for the Johnson County government. Chairman Kelly is going to do the opening, and there's on first way to switch the first two presentations, and we can go ahead and get started. It's up to you.
Yeah, we can switch it around.
I was just checking to see if he's on his way. He hadn't texted me yet, but
Sure, we can do the other presentation first. That'd be fine.
okay. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate
You
it.
bet, you bet. All right, so we'll go into our second presentation, proclaiming August 21st, 2024 as Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day in the city of Gardner. So I'm going to come forward, and I believe, there you go, Sarah. I think you had a few words you wanted to say afterwards. Is that right?
If that's okay.
Absolutely, sure. So I'm going to read this here. Whereas Americans today are experiencing the most devastating drug crisis in our nation's history, and whereas fentanyl is a highly addictive synthetic opioid that is 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine, and whereas illicit fentanyl has been found in all street drugs, including heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine, and whereas illicit fentanyl has been found in fake pressed pills that look like pharmaceutical grade Percocet, Adderall, Xanax, and OxyContin. Whereas fentanyl poisoning is the leading cause of death for adults aged 18 to 45 in the United States, surpassing suicide, gun violence, and car accidents. And whereas illicit fentanyl is odorless and tasteless, and you won't know it's hiding in the drugs you choose or use or try. And whereas a dose of fentanyl as small as 2 milligrams, the size of a snowflake, can be a lethal dose. And whereas it is becoming more common for individuals to unknowingly use fentanyl, which has led to the Drug Enforcement Agency issuing a public safety alert seeking to raise the awareness of a significant nationwide surge in counterfeit pills. So now therefore be it resolved that I, Todd Winters, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim August 21st, 2024 as Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day in the City of Gardner, Kansas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to present this to you.
Thank you.
And I think you have a little presentation you want to
Just
do on that.
Real short, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You bet.
I'm not sure if you want me to, if it's okay if I kind of just move around a little bit, but I'm Sharon Lucero. I've been a Johnson County resident for quite a few years, since I was 3, and I'm not going to tell you how long, so that's okay. My daughter was one of the statistics. She was given a fentanyl pill, and she had no clue. She was not a drug addict. She had gone through some very difficult times and was self-medicating with alcohol, and somebody gave her fentanyl. My husband and I were lucky enough to have a day and a half with her before she was 100% declared dead. She was a organ donor, which is also very, very important. Sign the back of your driver's license, be an organ donor. There's 5 people alive today because my daughter signed the back of her driver's license. I have brought today a case of naloxone. This has 2 units of naloxone in it. There's 12 of them here, but I also brought, well, don't think one is going to work. One is not going to work. 2 probably will not work. We need multiple, but if you suspect a drug overdose, get them on the way and get help. You may need to do CPR, very important. I brought some papers I'm gonna leave here with the naloxone. This paper here shows what some of the symptoms are. It also shows you how to use the naloxone. You can also take training and know exactly how to do it. Please, you pick that up. This paper here has UR codes. As long as you're a Kansas resident, you can get naloxone for free from DECA. Very important. I have it in my purse. I have it in my car. I have it in my home. You don't know. You may have somebody come over, you know, but talk to your kids. Make sure your kids know you don't take anything from anybody. They're putting fentanyl in anything you can imagine, they're putting it in. Kids do not believe it, but it is fact by DEA that it is being put in marijuana. So don't think, you know, it's like the olden days or anything like that. It's not. But you can also use this UR code, put in your name, email, address, they'll send it to you free. You can get it for every person in your household. Make sure everybody has it. Talk to your kids. It doesn't matter what age. Start talking to them. I also have a paper here. I put on this paper different sites. DECA, DEA. On the sites, it will show you this pencil. That's how much how much fentanyl can kill you. It's just a few grains of salt. You cannot tell the difference of a fake or a real pill. And the DEA has that 7 out of 10 pills have enough fentanyl in them to kill you. 98% of the illicit pills have some amount of fentanyl in them. You've got to be aware. You've got to talk. And it's not just teenagers and young adults. It's happening where there might be an addict, a family member. They leave it out. There are babies dying of this. There are people that are 70 years old dying of this. It's not a joke. It's not going to go away unless every single person talks to your family and make sure that they're aware of it. I have these printouts. This is a good one. Snapchat, emojis. Did you know that you can buy drugs off of Snapchat by using emojis? And then the drug dealer will have DoorDash come in and deliver it to your house. Okay? Watch your kids. Watch their phones. The DEA is also saying if you have a high schooler or a child that you're going to get a phone for, do not get an iPhone. Worst thing you will ever do. Your kids all want an iPhone because everybody has an iPhone. You don't want to get an iPhone because we lucked out on our daughter's iPhone because we didn't know. But the FBI has to break it to get in, to get the information. The detectives are still working on her case. It's murder. They are prosecuting people nowadays. And this has DECA, it has DEA, it has Charlie's, A Song for Charlie, excellent information like these informations that I have. Documentary. Every teenager or middle schooler should watch it. Dead on Arrival. Get them to watch it. You sit down and watch it with them. Keeping Clean for Coop is another lady family whose son died. He took a half with 3 of his friends. He died, the other 3 lived. And there's there's documentaries out there by Texas Pictures, Glenn Muse. I have actually been, well, I was going to bring this, but I thought I would, but a documentary that I was part of, 17 minutes long. And it tells the story of what we went through. No family should go through it. They have done 143 documentaries right now. Let me show you something. You know, I'm not sure. This is my daughter. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful young lady. She went to school out here, grew up in Edgerton and Gardner. One kill kills. One kill kills. This is what I call my shock board. Because no parent ever wants to walk into a hospital and see their child puffed up on a respirator with so many tubes, everything attached to their child. The hurt, the pain. You gotta do it. Every single person, you've gotta talk to your families. And she wanted to be a special ed teacher. She did. God took her home. God took her home. She saved 5 people's lives. I thank you for this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs.
Copies. I'm sorry, but it's so important. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. We have that available in the schools. Is that correct?
The SROs carry it. All of our officers carry naloxone.
School buses should have it also.
I'm not sure what program the school
Yeah.
has, but the officers do have it.
Yeah, which is good. I'm gonna be retiring soon. You know what my new job is gonna be? So, is it okay? Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time, sir.
Okay, we'll go back to presentation number 1. Looks like Chairman Kelly's here. Welcome, Chairman. I kept my promise. I put you at the beginning of the meeting.
Well, forgive me for a meeting run long. I know you all know how Mondays can be, and I don't need to be Garfield about it. But I guess the silver lining is I got to be present here for that amazing presentation from Ms. Lucero. And the county is working very hard in partnership with a lot of the great organizations that she spoke about. We have a website called younevernowjoco.org, which has a lot of great information for our youth in our community. And we've been putting a lot of marketing towards TikTok and some of the other Instagram and platforms where we're trying to meet the youth where they are. And through our opioid settlement funds, we hope to continue that, but also work with cities and organizations like hers and a lot of the ones that she mentioned to really have a comprehensive plan to address the fentanyl epidemic that we all agree is happening in our community. So I was glad I was able to hear that, and thank you for honoring her with that proclamation, Mayor. With that, Mayor, City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to be in Gardner this evening. It's nice to be back to talk a little bit about a known community need that we have and what we feel is a really unique opportunity to address that. Mike Kelly, Chair, Johnson County Board of County Commissioners. And we are appreciative of the cities that we've been able to speak to. I'm glad we are here in Gardner tonight because there's a number of gaps in our housing continuum, and we understand that one of the root causes there is affordable housing, and we're working to try to address that together with Gardner and with other city partners. But we also realize that there is a known gap at the end of our housing continuum, and that's services for the unhoused. This is not a new endeavor that people have been working towards, but we feel like now there's a really unique opportunity that exists to really potentially address that in a unique way that hasn't happened yet in Johnson County. There is not a 24/7, 365 shelter for adults in Johnson County, and we feel that that can be really a catalyst for our quest to address a growing unhoused population. You'll hear from a trusted partner in that endeavor, and that's Restart, who's been working within our metropolitan region for more than 40 years to help the unhoused, and was recommended by an RFP process, unanimously recommended by an RFP process that included not only representatives from cities, but other professionals in the field that UCS put together when we were endeavoring to potentially help support a homeless services center. We know that there's a lot of money that's being spent in law enforcement, in EMS, and otherwise right now to address this problem. But the fix that we have that will be presented to you today helps save community resources, all the while works with other trusted partners to try to get people back on their feet and into permanent, stable housing and into the workforce. You'll hear that 40% of the people who are homeless in Johnson County are working already, but there's unique partnerships that we have for the Housing Services Center that includes Workforce Partnership, Johnson County Community College, in addition to the mental health department at Johnson County, our housing support team that already exists, and our Department of Health and Environment. A number of good questions that you have about this, I am sure, and we're looking forward to addressing those questions that you have. And I know that the timing of our suggestion for partnership with Restart and the manner in which it was presented to you wasn't ideal. I'll be the first to admit that. I don't think, though, that it takes away from the merit of the project and what it can do for our community. And I know one of the questions that I'm sure you'll have, and I'll be happy to address it up front, why cities? Why am I here talking to you about this? I don't want to give the impression, and by coming to the cities, we didn't want to give the impression that Johnson County was washing its hands of this project. Far from it. Not only the millions of dollars that we have earmarked to not only purchase the facility, but make the necessary renovations, the ad valorem dollars that we have also pledged to this, that's $62,000 annually that we at the county have also pledged. But the ongoing support of the wraparound services from mental health, from our housing services team, from Workforce Partnership, Community College, et cetera, we're in this for the duration. We also have a reverter clause in our agreement with Restart that if there are financial issues, if there are problems with the facility, if it is not meeting its mission, the county can and will step in. We haven't been shy about explaining that to Restart. But additionally, the funds from cities, which we feel is a reasonable ask, is also one that shows not just one public entity standing together, but a chorus of voices from more than 20 public entities saying that we recognize this community need and we're willing to put some skin in the game. That is able to be leveraged so much by Restart when they're looking for private funding from philanthropic dollars to be able to achieve long-term sustainable fiscal health for this facility and its operations. More so, we understand that the suggestion to fund Restart is for a period of 5 years, but I think we all recognize we're all policymakers that you can't bind future councils. We get that. Neither can the county Board of County Commissioners. So we think it is stronger for the fiscal health of Restart and this operating fund that it not just be one board that's responsible for the entire funding. For if the county commission shifts focus in 2 years or in 3 years, we don't want just one entity to be able to pull the rug from under this fund. If it is diversified in its source, we have diversity of sustaining that fund. And we feel that it sends a strong message to the county and its city in partners working together to be able to address, again, this known community need to help people get into permanent, stable housing, into the workforce, but also support our law enforcement and EMS. So I'm here to answer questions. You're going to hear a great presentation from Stephanie. Thank you for letting us be here. Then without further ado, we'll welcome Stephanie Boyer.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for giving us some time this evening to share this amazing project with you. Okay, am I in charge here? Yes? Okay, thanks. I think an important thing to sort of step back, right, is a project like this kind of gets moving once the ball starts rolling. It starts really rolling, which is where we are. But it's important to kind of take a step back to also note that a lot of folks across Johnson County have been working on this issue for many years. And their work is really what has led to this point today. So in 2021, when UCS conducted their housing study, they identified unseen homelessness as a housing challenge all across Johnson County. And from that identification, a group of stakeholders really came together and completed focus groups, really looked at a lot of data and research, which the Dignity Project report was then generated from. So in that report, it was recommended that the gap in need across Johnson County in particular was the need for 50 beds of non-congregate shelter for single adults, as well as some additional transitional housing. So there is currently a family shelter in Olathe. There is a domestic violence shelter. There's some programming for youth. There are some, sprinkling of a variety of programs, but there was nothing for the single adult population, which did largely make up who was experiencing homelessness, particularly unsheltered homelessness. So that was really the basis for why the RFP was written in the way that it was, and that was sort of the target project. So when we look at homelessness in Johnson County, this is the latest point in time count data that came out in about mid to late July, so pretty recent, about a month ago. This count was conducted in January, as it is every year across every community. On one 24-hour period in January, every community has to go out and sort of count the number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness across your community. And those numbers are important because that is what drives HUD dollars into your continuum of care. So it's really important work, and it takes a lot of volunteers to go out and do this every year. And so in January, there were 250 people on that given night experiencing homelessness in Johnson County, with 23% of those folks living unsheltered. So you can see that the shelter and some of those programs that I mentioned, right, folks were in those programs on those nights, and they get counted as well. An important thing to note here is that 85% of the households were adults only, right? So a single adult. So again, the data is just reflective again of what it's been over the years and really that identified need. And as Chairman Kelly mentioned, an important data that's not always true across a lot of communities is that 40% of these folks were employed on this night that they were experiencing homelessness in Johnson County. So you have a lot of folks living in cars or sleeping outside that are still showing up to go to a job every day, which really says something about them. The overall system interacted with 685 people last year, so they were able to divert some of those folks, help with rental assistance, mediate things, get folks connected back into something. And 63% of those folks had either were employed or had income of Social Security or disability. So again, you have a pretty high rate of folks who have income. They need a housing solution that matches their income, right? And we can make a pretty big, significant dent. I think that's one of the things that excites us most about this project, is this really does leverage and put Johnson County with a resource that has the ability to be able to end homelessness in Johnson County, which would be pretty amazing and could really be something that other communities could look to. So who is Restart? Some of you may have heard of us. You're a little far from where we are, but we do work across Jackson, Wyandotte, and Johnson County, and we serve about 1,400 people a year. We have existed for over 44 years, so we have been an organization that has really adapted and changed to the ever-changing face of homelessness over the last 44 years. When we began, we were in the basement of a church as just an overnight shelter for single men, because 44 years ago, that was the face of who was experiencing homelessness. Today, we offer all these programs that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. Lots of programming targeted to youth, veteran, families, and single adults. The face of who's experiencing homelessness has significantly changed over particularly the last 20 years or so. So we really believe in doing this work by providing programs and not Band-Aids. So what we started out as an overnight only thing, that doesn't exist anymore. Everything, including every shelter program, is a program. When folks come in, they are there for a period of time. They have case management and wraparound support services. Our goal is an exit out of homelessness for folks, right? So we're not interested in just providing you safety for one night or just during the day or just this meal. It's all of those things together that actually helps to end someone's homelessness. So we have a 90% success rate at doing that, so it works in doing it that way. You have a high rate of folks exiting homelessness, which is really great to add into a system because that means we can get folks out and be ready to take someone who might be newly experiencing homelessness. So how will folks come to the Homeless Services Center? This is really important because, as I mentioned, right, this project too would be set up as a program. The design of it is to be referral based, so this is not an overnight shelter. This is a program, and folks won't just walk up or line up to get in. It is referral. It will come and work within the current coordinated entry system. So United Community Services oversees the continuum of care and the coordinated entry system. So it's important when you add new resources like this into the system that it does function within your homeless services system. That makes sure that we're connecting the right folks to the right resource, and we're diverting folks out of the system as quickly as we can, if we can. So we want folks to continue to use that process and go to one of these 4 hubs where they will receive an assessment, and they'll really match up the person's need to the solution, divert folks out if they can, which you want to be able to do because as you go further and further into the system, the interventions cost more, right? And so we want to be able, if we can divert folks out, we want to be able to do that. For folks who there isn't a solution for that day that they get assessed, they go on what's called the by name list, and they essentially wait on that list until something comes open in one of the programs that they might qualify for. So the Homeless Services Center would become a new provider within that system and would have new opportunities that don't exist today for folks to be able to come into. So what will be happening at the center are 2 major components. So the first is the lodge, which will be 50 units of non-congregate shelter. So this is in a hotel. So essentially each person does have their own room and bathroom, just exactly the same as a hotel room. And so that's really important too, because when you don't have shared spaces, you have much more opportunity to have better interventions with folks. Folks are more likely to say yes to come in if they know they don't have to share a room with someone else or be in a large room that's more of a congregate type setting. So folks will stay in that program for 30 to 90 days and work with the case manager and have access to all the support services through Johnson County Mental Health, as well as Health Partnership Clinic, Johnson County Community College and Workforce Partnership, as well as many others that continue to reach out to say we want to come in and provide services. And we'll provide case management, additional wraparound services too. So again, that's the program that the focus is an exit out of homelessness, right? So the second component is the residences, which is 25 studio apartments. So this is meant to be transitional living. So folks could live in this for up to 24 months. This serves a couple of purposes. So one, there will be some folks that are going to work really hard in that 30 to 90 days, but we are not going to be able to get them connected to a housing solution that's going to provide them long-term stability, right? The last thing we want to do is set folks up to go into a housing situation that they truly can't really afford, and they're going to be right at risk of homelessness again. So oftentimes a population that we see within this situation are seniors who are living on a fixed income, and they really need to be living in an income-based senior housing program, right? So that they can ensure that their rent is going to stay reasonable, and they're going to pay 30%, and they're going to be able to afford that and have stability in their housing long term. But those programs often have long wait lists, and those wait lists can be a year or two long sometimes. So it's important that we have mechanisms for folks in that situation where they can still be in that kind of supportive housing that will help get them to that long-term permanent solution. Additionally, we've designed that because we'll be able to generate revenue from the rent from those apartments, which will help support the overall operation. So it's been important to really diversify where the operating funds come from for the program. And the idea of that is that we'll be able to have vouchers on the site, and then if they do need to move with that voucher, they would be able to do that as well. So it will also be a way to move vouchers out into the community as well. So when we talk about community benefits, there are a whole lot of them. I could stand here and list probably 100 of them to you today, but I won't do that. We'll really focus just on a couple today that are really important, in particular, I think, for cities to consider, right, is that Chairman Kelly already mentioned, right, every city in some sort of fashion is dealing with this issue of folks experiencing homelessness, and oftentimes it is in that emergency reactive response, which is the most expensive response that we can have as a community. It does cost about 18 times more to provide that sort of emergency intervention than it does to provide the housing and supportive services intervention. And 7 times more to just incarcerate folks, right? And both of those interventions, folks are not ending their homelessness. They are still homeless when they walk out of jail, when they walk out of the emergency room, or after they have that encounter with law enforcement, they're still experiencing homelessness, and it often becomes this vicious cycle that keeps occurring, which is why that cost keeps rising so high. There are a couple of other resources that already exist in the Johnson County system that'll be really important to be at play within that coordinated entry system and with the Homeless Services Center as well, and that is both street outreach and co-responders. Street outreach workers and co-responders can also complete that assessment for the coordinated entry system, so they can do that with folks they are encountering on the streets. So we recognize obviously not everyone can make it to a hub site to get that done. So there is the ability to be able to do that out in the community as well. And street outreach workers really work hard to build relationships with folks, build that trust, get folks connected to resources. It will be much easier when they have this resource to be able to connect folks to as well. And Johnson County Mental Health is expanding their street outreach to up to 9 people, so that will be deployed all across Johnson County. So again, as we approach this project, we've really looked at it as a public-private partnership, and which is why we're here to talk to you tonight, asking you to join and be a partner with us in this work. So you see here just sort of a distribution. We are seeking about 30% of the operating budget from a city and county contribution, with 70% of that coming from Restart, and that would be a combination of rental income and indirect and direct funding, which will come from grants, foundations, private donors, faith-based community, corporations, all of those things. So where are we right now? We've officially submitted our special use permit process to the city of Lenexa. We are slated to go on the Planning Commission on August 26th and to the City Council on September 17th. We've been hosting several community engagement sessions with businesses and neighbors nearby the center. And this week, actually Wednesday night and today's Monday, Wednesday night and Thursday night, we are hosting all community meetings for anyone in Johnson County to be able to attend and learn more about the center, ask questions. So those will be open to the public. if all goes well in the special use permit process, the building would, the sale of the building would close at the end of October, and we would begin renovations. And then we would expect renovations to take till about September-ish of 2025, and that would be the expected opening. So that's it. I'll take questions, or if you have questions for Chairman Kelly, he's available as well.
All right, thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Chairman Kelly. I'm sure our council has questions.
Yeah.
And we'll open it up to council. Can we go first, Councilman? Yeah. Shoot, would you like to go first? Yeah.
Yeah.
You had a few things.
I appreciate Restart's efforts in this. There is obviously a need for homeless in the community. There's no denying that, and we appreciate the fact that you're willing to step up to help out with some of that. My concerns are more around, one, how this is happening, and two, the actions of the county commission that have helped to a great extent, create a significant concern within this county. So, Chair Kelly, how many Johnson County municipalities have elected to fund this shelter project with supplemental, obviously non-budgeted city funds, because this was not on most people's budget radar?
No, I think there's about 10 that have committed in some way or another at this point. Others to whom we've provided presentations that have not yet decided on whether or not to support. But I think the conversations have been good. The questions have been pointed, but I think fair. But I think the conversations have been really great. And before I forget to mention it, we do have some staff here, and Commissioner Allen Brand has joined us as well, your county commission. So just want to make sure I appreciate the work that they have done on this project as well.
I have a few more questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this, oh, there it goes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. This particular, it doesn't reach, so I'm going to be leaning way over here. Sorry about that. So we just saw a moving presentation a couple of minutes ago on lethal fentanyl poisoning of a precious young woman who was taken way too soon. What measures are being taken to ensure that alcohol and drug, and especially fentanyl use, will not be tolerated in this new facility?
I'm going to defer to the expert on that.
Yeah. So we do searches of people and their bags every time that they enter the building. So in that, we're looking for those types of things. We will obviously remove those things and destroy those things if they are found. We additionally do weekly room searches, and then if we expect anything, we definitely go over sort of rules and expectations with folks and know that we can do room searches at any point. So if we start noticing that anyone might be, acting in any kind of certain way that's concerning, we will, take action on those things as well.
To follow up on that, is there going to be a consistent law enforcement presence at this facility if there's any difficulties encountered, or is there going to be a way to protect the individuals in this shelter, other individuals, if there's ever a disturbance or any type of illicit activity that was not caught by your staff?
So we won't have law enforcement present, on site all the time, no. But do we have staff that serve in sort of a security capacity? Yes. There's a lot of components just overall to the site and the building as well, as far as access control to the building. Everyone has to be let in by staff to the building. That's how we control make sure that those searches happen. The gates at both entrances will have access control there as well. So we want to be able to control who's coming onto the property and into the parking lot as well. We have cameras, both interior and exterior, that are monitored 24 hours a day, as well as staff that do hourly walkthroughs, interior and exterior, to the building.
My concern here is that, as the previous presenter said, you can have a single pill.
Yeah.
And it could be deadly. And that's not going to be found on a standard check. It's just impossible. All right, so that's another one of my concerns, and one of the reasons why I was thinking it might be better to engage law enforcement in such an effort as this, because we don't have a lot of information as to who is being brought into the shelter. Is this shelter and its accompanying service center available to those who are unauthorized to be in the United States? Either because they're undocumented aliens, or because they're maybe on a terror watch list, or because they're not area residents, people who have just come in from out of town or out of state to show up at the shelter?
So the reason that we've designed this in the way that we have, right, that it functions through that coordinated entry system and that it's not just a walk up and anybody's gonna just walk in, is that we want folks to go through that assessment. And that process in itself really helps to ensure that it is focused around Johnson County residents. Those assessors, if they identify folks in that process that aren't Johnson County residents, then typically they're going to try to work to get those folks connected back to whatever community they're from, because likely they have some sort of support system there, and it's best if we can get them connected back to there. So it's definitely a mechanism to be able to divert folks out and ensure that there's a focus on Johnson County residents.
A focus, but there's nothing that requires that they be Johnson County residents, correct? I mean, I saw some of the debate on this at the county commission meeting, and I think they actually voted down an amendment that would have required them to show a tie to Johnson County before getting services, and specifically illegal immigrants or people who are in the country in an unauthorized manner. So that's really concerning to me, and I'm sure it's concerning to a lot of people here at the dais. If Gardner chooses not to fund this, and this is actually more for Chair Kelly's answer, if Gardner chooses not to fund this with supplemental or non-budgeted funds because we've completed our budget process, will the county commission raise the mill levy in order to do this anyway?
No, we're not going to ask for more funding from Gardner to do this. And what Stephanie will tell you is that this is the request that's being made to the cities. It's a coalition of the willing, so if some choose not to participate, there won't be a supplemental ask coming back to Gardner for this project. What it will be is another necessity to raise private and philanthropic funds to be able to then fulfill whatever gap may be there. The hardest part for an organization like this is to have seed funding up front. A lot of, say, federal grants or other funding sources require an ongoing operation. So to be able to address that, we wanted to provide an opportunity for seed funding on the front end that could then be leveraged. To your prior question, I understand the conversation that was had. The other question that I think we all need to think of is, well, then what if? What if not this system, then what? When we talk about the coordinated entry system, it is really a great tool that we have that I think sometimes we underutilize in allowing our law enforcement, our mental health co-responders, our street outreach teams to work together to understand and face the challenge that a growing homeless population has in our community. So one of the good things, I think the co-benefits of this shelter is an opportunity to really flex that muscle, to get that coordinated entry system to be stronger, to increase the communications between the police departments, the sheriff's office, the mental health co-responders, and the nonprofit community, the professionals in this field, to be able to address things. And if we're not able to help them here, somebody doesn't just go poof and go away. They're still on the street in our community, requiring even more costly service. So we think it's a good tool that will help people who are already here in Johnson County.
Oh, I've got a few more, but I'll let other people speak because I'm monopolizing the conversation right now.
Councilman McNeil.
Yes. Earlier you mentioned, thanks for the presentation. It's very informative. Earlier you mentioned that people that are not authorized to be in the United States will not be able to enter the facility. Can you give us a word in one syllable whether that will be allowed or not? Will it be allowed? Will it happen?
So I mean, I can't say that it 100% will never happen. I can tell you from doing this work for a really long time that very few immigrants ever interact with this system or reach out to this system for a number of reasons. One, they do typically support each other and really will come together as families and groups to support one another. And second, a lot of the long-term like housing programs, they would not be eligible for, right? So, so we just don't really see a lot of immigrant population seeking services within the system.
Okay. I had a couple of, go ahead. I had a couple other questions if I could.
Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier private and grant funding and things going to provide the bulk of this, along with the residents chipping in 30% of their wages. What assurances do we have that there's going to be enough money long term for that funding to continue without it coming back into the pocketbooks of Johnson County residents?
Yeah. So, you know, we've committed that this is the strategy to funding, and we don't plan to change that strategy. So, you know, as a nonprofit, we're used to sort of funding has an ebb and flow, particularly from private funding and grant funding. And so just continuing to diversify where that comes from. And, you know, we've been doing this work in the community a long time, so we do have a lot of folks, a lot of partners, and a lot of folks to be able to reach out to. And a lot of folks that are excited to fund work in Johnson County. And so, you know, as Chairman Kelly mentioned as well, we, you know, will obviously apply for a lot of additional other grants and federal funding. But a lot of that we can't apply for today because the program doesn't exist today, right? And we need to be able to show data and to be able to write about the program and things like that. So after the first year or two, you know, you have a lot stronger application to go after multi-year funding for a lot of those federal funds, which typically are sometimes 3 and 5 year funding opportunities.
Another question, just there's a limited, looking at your information, there's just a limited number of people this could potentially help. And some of them can be there for a very long period of time in the residential side of this equation. What accountability is there being placed on the residents to get themselves out quicker than, sooner than later?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's really why the lodge is designed to be that, you know, the bulk of those beds, 50 rooms, are designed to be that 30 to 90 day, you know, option for folks. And so the reason we say 30 to 90 days is because at 30 days, we're really evaluating, are you invested in working with your case manager and actively working a plan to resolve your housing solution, right? And so if a person is not, then we're going to have that conversation to say, we either need you to get on board and work with your case manager on a plan, or we're going to need to talk about an exit date and what that looks like.
What kind of continuum would that be on? If they're not working with their caseworker, how soon can that bed be, that room or facility or suite be available to another resident?
Yeah, typically we'll give folks a week or two. We'll, you know, work on a plan. We want them to have some sort of safe exit strategy, and so we want to be able to allow a little bit of time. There can be circumstances where it could be the next day, so it can vary.
Is there a written documented plan that this follows, or is it just kind of case by case basis?
Yeah, there's an overall plan, right? But as everything, there is a case by case, you know, situation. It's also not like you've at the 90 days and you have to go. Say you have a housing plan, but you can't move into your apartment until 2 more weeks. We're certainly not going to put someone back on the street for 2 weeks, right? To wait for that, and we want them to wait safely for that permanent intervention.
And if somebody is habitually unemployable, that 30% that they're supposed to be contributing, how does that work?
Yeah, so so that 30% is really just on the residences. So that's for the longer term transitional housing part of it. So you know, typically, you know, you may see a lot of folks in that program that do receive Social Security or disability. We'll, you know, obviously we're assessing and working with folks to determine too, sometimes we do encounter people who haven't applied for those benefits yet, but they certainly maybe need to. And so that's one strategy that a case manager may employ with someone while they're there as well.
My last question, suppose that there's not, this kind of goes back to Councilmember Schutz's question earlier. suppose there's not very many communities that want to chip in and fund this thing. It sounds to me like this could just be pushed right back onto the pocketbooks of Johnson County residents through mill levies and property taxes. What assurances do we have as a public and residents of Johnson County that will not happen?
We've never approached any other project in that way, so I wouldn't say that, see any reason that we would want to do that now. Like I said, I think the strategy we've sort of employed, we feel like is one that is a very doable one. So.
Thank you.
Mark,
Yeah.
Do you have questions?
Go ahead.
Okay, council member, thank you. Just to address a little bit on the questions that council member McNear had asked. One of the things that drew us to restart, drew that RFP committee to restart, is their success rate, a 90% success rate in terms of getting people into permanent stable housing. That's a track record of success that'd be helpful to Johnson County. And I think another thing to mention is that while 40% of the people who are in or who are unhoused in Johnson County right now are unemployed, 62% have some form of income, whether that be Social Security or disability as well. And it really makes you think about what the face of homelessness is in Johnson County. One of the stories that stuck with me a lot was an elderly woman who was past working age, who got cancer. And she had to make a choice between paying for her chemotherapy or paying her rent. And she made the choice to stay alive and pay for her chemotherapy, and therefore sought service from Restart in one of their other operations. So I understand that housing and unhoused individuals take a lot of different forms. And so we want to be able to also help some of the most vulnerable in our community that have lived their whole lives here.
Thank you.
Councilman Wade.
Yeah, I think the one question I have is, it seems that the relationship that you have with the Catholic Charities, with Salvation Army, seems to be a very important part of this whole entire process. Can you talk to how long of a relationship you've had with these organizations? Because I think that may help assuage some of the concerns about people from outside the community, some people from outside of Johnson County.
Yeah. So we have had a really strong partnership with Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, in particular around our veteran program, so our supportive services for veteran families. We all work very closely together as organizations with the VA as well. And so, that partnership has probably been going on for 10, 12 years since that program really began in both Missouri and Kansas. So we do that work on both sides of the state line. And those are really important programs too, because and identifying those veterans early, right? So that's often to a population that can be diverted out quickly, because those programs have other kinds of funding. So we could put a veteran in a hotel while we get them connected to a HUD-VESH voucher that's going to be their long-term housing solution. So again, that's why it's really important to go through that assessment, identify those folks, because if we can pull folks out and plug them in and solve their homelessness in a different path, then we want to be able to do that for sure. We rely on a lot of partners to do this work. Harvesters is another one, Giving the Basics is one, Happy Bottoms for our families, for diapers. Giving the Basics we partner with for all of our donations of hygiene items and things like that. So you can't do this work alone for sure, and we rely upon a lot of different partners and organizations.
Thank you. Any other questions? Council Vice President.
I don't have any specific questions, just a couple of comments. I've actually received more messages and emails and communication from the Gardner citizens on this than anything I have in a few years. And overwhelmingly, our citizens are not in favor of having their tax dollars go towards that. I would not be in favor on voting for anything this evening without it being an agenda item that is very public for our citizens to be able to come put a comment on, but if we had to make a decision tonight,
We can't hear.
it's been overwhelming that the people who have communicated to me are not in favor of more taxes going towards this.
Thank you. Council President Baldwin?
So first off, I applaud Restart on what you're doing. Seems like a fabulous program, and I think what you've done is good, and I hope your future success is even better. That being said, since when am I too quiet? Couple of questions, probably more for Chairman Kelly. You mentioned if Restart had problems that the county would step in. I assume that means the county spends more dollars.
Well, so we have an assignment agreement, and as part of that assignment agreement, there's a reverter clause to the county, which in certain situations that, yes, the county would step in. Now, what the county does at that point would be a county decision. It would be a policy decision that the board would discuss.
Okay. So one of my concerns with that is you mentioned diversifying the funding sources, essentially the multiple cities, another board, et cetera. What I'm really hearing is that then it's a program that can never go away, regardless if it's good or bad, because there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And if this program is really successful, I could see where 5 years turns into forever, because 50 beds turns into, hey, we need to do another one of these. Now we need 500 beds. So I don't see where the dollars don't end. It seems like they're going to continue. And I'm really just kind of flabbergasted that 30% of this is coming from the cities and the county, but it's a county project essentially. And, our budget's in the tens of millions, not hundreds of millions, billions. So I don't know why this would even be on the cities at all. And furthermore, you mentioned the issue with the lady that had to choose between her house and her health. One of the reasons that she had to do that is because mill levies and assessments at the county level are astronomical, not because the city raised their taxes. So all that being said, I've never believed that charity is the purpose of government. I see the benefit of Restart's program. And what I hope is that in this conversation with everyone and getting it out in front of everyone, that you would receive more donations so that you don't need the city and the county's investment to make this happen. But I would not be in favor of pledging tax dollars to this. It's too nebulous, and also I don't believe charity is a purpose of government. So.
And on that comment, pledging city tax dollars and county tax dollars is basically pledging a Gardner citizens' tax dollars twice, because they pay Johnson.
Actually, three times, because you're already taking federal dollars.
So,
And I just had a couple of questions. Has Restart managed one of these facilities? Yes. Where was that? Or where is that?
Yes, we have, all the programs that were on that previous slide. So we operate now a family shelter, a singles shelter, and a youth shelter in Kansas City, Missouri, as well as multiple transitional housing programs across Jackson and Wyandotte. And then we have had a youth transitional living program in Olathe, and street outreach, youth street outreach in Johnson County as well.
Okay. So something similar, to housing 50 families.
Do what?
So those are similar to housing the 50 families in a single location, like the hotel?
Yes, yeah. So our main location just east of downtown Kansas City has all of those different emergency shelters in it. There's one for families, one for adults, and one for youth, as well as 2 transitional housing programs in that. So there's a lot of different programs going on in that one building. The strategy for this is a little better and probably more of a preferred style of having sort of 2 and having that first step and that second step for folks that were not able to get out in that, right? A lot of conversation went around whether we were going to serve families, open it to any population to be served here. It has been our experience, and we're actually working to purchase a separate building in Missouri to expand our family shelter and for family shelter to be at its own site. Families and children just have very different, unique needs, and we see the benefit in really separating those. But because Johnson County already has a family shelter, again, and the data just continued to point that the gap, here was really for single adults. That's why this has been targeted in that way.
And then my other question was, you have a target opening of next September, correct?
Yes.
And you're asking for the operating expenses and things now for this budget cycle, is that correct?
In 2025.
Oh, okay. Next, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just one last comment. Council President actually kind of took my thunder a little bit on this, and that's okay. That's all right. We're all able to have that flash of brilliance, So, Council President actually made a great statement, and that was that we need to actually look at the root causes of homelessness and what drives people out of their homes. And we've had a serious situation in Johnson County over the last 10 years, but primarily within the last 5 and I actually have a graph, a chart that shows this. I have I'll make this available to others in the audience. This is the cumulative percentage increase in these particular entries here. The one in the green is Johnson County property tax. The one in the purple is assessed valuations, and the one in the blue is Johnson County budget numbers for the last 10 years. And the red line is the rate of inflation, CPI. And as this graph clearly shows, our property tax values, our property tax rates in our county are going up at least at the rate of 3 times the rate of inflation. And that's adjusted for population growth. And actually from this last year, we have found that according to data we're getting, preliminary data, that we're actually seeing a net out-migration of people from Johnson County. This cannot continue. This is unsustainable, and it's the same county commissioners that are now asking the cities for these funds that are responsible for this. And so we can look at the actual issues of homelessness and of unhomed individuals, but when people can't afford to pay their rent or their mortgage because either their rents are going higher because the commercial landlords are raising their rents, or because they can't pay for their housing because the people who are living in those houses can't afford the taxes, especially, and this is not just a county problem. This is a city problem, and it's a school district problem. And it needs to be addressed. It's not being addressed, and that's one of the reasons why we're having an issue with more and more people having to live out of their cars while going to work. It's not a wage issue, it is a tax issue. And with that, I'll stand down.
I kind of like to kind of piggyback on what Steve, Councilmember Shute just mentioned. One of the things, my day job, I am a realtor by day job and have been since 2002. On the 20th of May of this year, I was up at the recorder's office in the Johnson County Administration Building. And if you're familiar with that, there's 2 windows for recording, there's 2 windows for tax payment. I literally saw seniors that had their homes paid for 20 or 30 years, begging, pleading, in tears and crying. Our taxes are now more than our Social Security payment annually. And these people are people that are being put out on the street because of the high tax rates in Johnson County. This thing, Steve, if I understand your chart that you gave us here, our spending and revenue generation for Johnson County taxes has eclipsed inflation by 200% or more. That's unsustainable, guys. And in the business I'm in, taxes affect more people than anything else in their ability to stay in their homes. And I'm getting pretty tired of seeing this happen year after year after year. Mike, I got a question for you, sir. What's going to happen when real estate values start capping out and start going the other way? Are you going to lower the mill levies, or are you going to keep raising mill levies to make your revenue neutral? Which answer? A or B?
Councilman, let's try and keep it focused on the,
Well,
that's
so,
a
no,
topic for another day.
Yeah, I understand the passions. I appreciate those, and I'm happy to have a conversation about taxes. Another point, we can talk about Johnson County having the lowest mill levy in the state. We can talk about us having the lowest percentage of property tax as a percentage of household income of anywhere in the region. We can talk about the innovations that the county staff has made to provide the services in a difficult economy like you all have made as well. And I'd be happy to talk about those. But talking about the center as a whole, one of the reasons that we came to you tonight and that we're going to the other cities is because the ability for Restart, somebody to do this alone from Greenfield, would be exorbitantly expensive. Like tens of millions of dollars would be needed to build a facility by themselves and to have somebody raise all of that capital before actually deploying it. Kind of somewhat works against the mission of a nonprofit whose duty is to serve. And so when we have these unique funds, one-time funds, to be able to leverage those to try to provide an opportunity for a trusted partner to be able to serve and therefore to address a need in a way that is different and we think more effective than the way that it's being addressed now. Because we're spending money on this now, guys. We are having our law enforcement and our EMS be utilized by a certain population to an exorbitant amount more than the general public. And so we have seen that, and we fear that that will continue. So by being able to provide this resource in a way that maybe is more, we feel, more effective, but also has the added benefit of hopefully getting people to a place where they have permanent, stable housing, doesn't mean we don't have continued challenges. It is a piece to a much broader puzzle. And the meeting the economy where it is part of that puzzle. And again, something I'd be happy to come and talk with you all about. My email and my phone is also on. So I'm happy to have that conversation with any of you if we'd like to do so at another time.
I have to apologize for getting out of control there.
Oh, you're fine.
To the members of the dais and our guests, I apologize for that. I do have one more series of questions. Who is Restart?
Do you want to take it?
So we're a nonprofit that serves people experiencing homelessness. We were established in 1980. We have a board of directors that oversees our work. We run 17 different kinds of programs, all targeted towards people at risk of or currently experiencing homelessness.
Are you locally based or how?
Yes.
Okay. And who funds that? Who's historically has funded that organization?
So all those same things that I mentioned before in sort of that public-private partnership. So we apply for grant funding, both local, state, and federal. We also go to private donors, to private foundations, to private individuals. We have some funding that comes from the faith community, from corporations and businesses. So all of those different areas.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Stephanie, for coming. I think Jim is looking for some direction. It's not something we will take action on this evening, not something we'll vote on, but Jim, I think, is looking for some direction, whether to bring this forward as a budget item or an unbudgeted item, I guess. And so if we have
Well, the issue we've got is we still don't know what the ask is. How much money are we talking about from the
There
city
is
of
a
Gardner?
specific-
It's
Sorry, it's not-
19,000 annually.
much?
19,000.
19,000 annually.
It's like 76 cents
Yeah.
per citizen.
per citizen, yeah.
Okay.
That's across the board, all Johnson County citizens, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And so, I don't know if we want to get a feel for a consensus, one way or the other. No action will be taken, so during public comment, if, we will certainly allow questions at that point, or presentations at that point. But I think you kind of stated that you're not in favor of this.
And I think you know my position on this.
Yes, Mark, you felt the same way.
I mean, I'd be interested in understanding if there is a way in which to put it in the budget, if there's other sort of funds I know that we have, not just the property taxes, but we have other sort of, can we use alcohol tax, some of the excise tax stuff? I don't know. That's just a question I have.
And that's a good point. And I did have some, we're still doing some research, I believe, on there's opioid settlement funds that'll be coming through, potentially, kind of almost like a pass-through. Steve?
On the question of using government citizen taxpayer funds to fund charity, it's not a no, but it's absolutely no.
I did have one question for Chairman Kelly. You mentioned one-time funding. Can you elaborate on that a little bit as to where that one-time funding is coming from? Is this leftover funds from CARES Act or ERA money?
It's the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, yes.
So it's ARPA and CARES Act money?
Right.
Okay. So that was, the CARES Act money was obviously intended for use for pandemic relief. Okay. I just wanted to ask about that. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. And, I'm assuming this is something yearly, maybe with a year of observation as well, discussion we can come back to.
Yeah, we sure hope so. And if it's successful, hopefully we'll be back here, or Stephanie will be back here next year.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, now time for public comment, and, oh, I'm sorry, it's a public hearing, I apologize. We have a motion for a public hearing, to hold a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to a request for a waiver of the distance limitation to allow for the sale and consumption of cereal beverages for consumption within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during tailgate tastings in Celebration Park. Do I have a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deed and second Shoot that we open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Public hearing is open. Anyone would like to come forward? If you could please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Frank Bannister. My address is 19815 South Gardner Road, Gardner, Kansas. My comment has to do with the presentation that y'all just heard.
Oh, sir, this is, we'll have time for that in just a few minutes.
Okay.
This is a public hearing for the sale of,
Oh, I'm sorry.
cereal
I thought it was open public.
Oh, that's all right.
hang
I'm
tight, we'll be
sorry.
with you in just a second, I think.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
You can sit in that first chair if you'd like. There you go. Okay. Anyone else like to come forward for the public hearing? Seeing none, is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Motion McNair, second Shoot. We close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Close the public hearing. Now, we'll open for public comments. You're welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of the public hearing. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. There's time talk over here. Please state your name and address for the record. The podium's now open. If you'd like to come forward, sir.
Thank you. I've already stated my name and address. Some of the things that concern me as a resident of Johnson County and living here in Gardner about this shelter, it's very controversial, as you may know if you've read and talked to people. The Johnson County commissioners don't even agree. There's some anti-sentiment on the commission. Some feel like this has been ramrodded down the commission's project list. I think the funding mechanism is completely wrong. I have read some of the documentations that the cities that the county wants to ask to participate, they're asking for as much as $250,000 from some of these cities. Now, I heard 19,000 here. I don't know where that came from. I may be mistaken, but I have done quite a bit of reading, and of course, not everything that I have read is accurate. But I would darn sure, as a city, look very, very closely at the detail of what Mike Kelly is bringing to you. I don't trust Mike Kelly in a lot of ways. We have a company sitting right out here in the industrial airport that was voted on by the county in a resolution to occupy a 200,000 square foot warehouse to build carbon nanotubes, which are components for electric cars. That company was represented in the county resolution as a Delaware-based company. That company is wholly owned by China, who has 23 members that are members of the Chinese Communist Party. In addition, the company in China that has the same name as the one that's going to be functioning right here in Gardner participates in China's A63 program. And I don't know if you know what that is, but that is a program where China is trying to build their economy through stealing technology from other countries. So this company that is going to be functioning right here in our county and kind of in the city will be sending funds to China to steal our technology, which they're already doing. China is our biggest threat. Mike Kelly pushed that through the county commission. Not everybody voted for it, but it passed. And the county commissioners did not know that was a China-owned company, and it is. The state house in Topeka had special hearings on this in September. And there was testimony given about the length and the breadth of this company. So I don't trust a lot of what comes before legislative matters from the county commission right now through its leader. And I wish he was here. I didn't want to talk behind his back. I have never met the man until I saw him tonight. But I was prepared to say what I said regardless. But I encourage you to take a very close look at anything that comes to you from the county. And I think this shelter, it's a noble idea. I was down at the Kansas City Public Library with my grandchildren Saturday. There were 30 homeless people in the library hanging out because they have no place to go. There were 15 residents, what I would consider, people that weren't homeless. You can tell homeless people when they walk in. They have backpacks. They take a drink of water. They use the restroom. I even talked to one of the library supervisors, and I said, "Is this like a hangout now, a shelter for homeless? Because that's not what the purpose of a library is." And they said, "Well, we can't really do anything about it as long as they're not causing a problem. They can come in and sit as long as they don't sleep." So it's a problem, but I have a concern with the location of it. It's right up there by Costco where the shelter is proposed. It goes before the Lenexa City Council August 26th for a vote. I've let the mayor and the council members know my views, and there are a lot of Lenexa people very concerned about putting a shelter like that in that location. There's no vetting. They'll have to serve illegal immigrants. They're going to use the HUD guidelines, which is a federal government program. You can't ask, don't tell. So it's not going to be for Johnson County residents. I anticipate there's going to be busing or travel from the Missouri side, enter Kansas City, to use the shelter. It's not going to be for Johnson County residents. So I think there's a lot of questions surrounding it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comment.
If there's any further comments?
Y'all know me.
Upstate your
But for everybody else, I'll let you know. Pamela Harkins, 445 East Shawnee Street, Gardner, Kansas. I'm here. First thing I want to say is I want to do all we can for homelessness. I see it here. A matter of fact, not that long ago, I was at Domino's and there was someone on the grass
I honestly thought they weren't living, and I went up to see if I could help them, and they were fine, they were just hungry. So I gave them something to eat. I do not think this shelter is the answer because it's not going to help our people. When the Board of County Commissioners voted down that it had to be for us, that it couldn't be for us, that said all you need to know. When they said that they don't have to be of here, that's all you know. I don't know if a lot of you know, but Mike Kelly and Quentin Lucas, they are best buds. Don't know if you know that that Quentin Lucas is trying to go to a higher seat. He's trying to clean out his city of his homeless. Where do you think they're going? They're coming here. Well, why should our taxes pay for people to come from other states, other counties, and our people are still on the streets? That doesn't, I don't want my taxes going for that. I truly think that I don't like where it's at either. It's sitting in a place right off of the highway that I know that they say, well, we're gonna go vet people here, or not vet, but they have to be allowed to come in by different sources. Okay, we all know that word of mouth gets around. Okay, then we're gonna have people thinking that is a homeless shelter they could go to. We're gonna have them all surrounding there. We're not having police anywhere around. If they have a problem, they're gonna call 911. Well, I'm sorry, sometimes 911 don't get there quick enough. And I think this whole plan has not been thought of out very well. I think that they said that the cities are going to fund it. They base it on population. Gardner is one, we're growing leaps and bounds. So this year, 19,000, we get more people in here next year, the year after. We're gonna keep going up, going up, going up. No, they get enough of our taxes setting up there and raising our property taxes. They wanted to do something for our homeless, lower, so we can sit here. My kids can't even live here, and they grew up here because the rent is absolutely ridiculous here. If they really want to do something, start lowering it, start finding ways to get our people off the street here with lower prices. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm not a Gardner resident, but I've got skin in the game, and I'd like to make a couple comments.
Sure, if you could say your name and address for there.
Sure. It's Steve Wirtz. I live in Overland Park with my wife and 3 kids. 3915 West 102nd Street in OP. I've liked the way that you deliberated tonight and asked some really, really good questions. I think that one of the things that people don't understand is that they really want to solve this. There's 2 excellent organizations that are on the Missouri side, City Union Mission and Hillcrest. They got a great track record. They could do this on a 1/10 of what this is budgeted for, and they'd have a great product. My wife works in a homeless pregnancy for homeless mothers system on the Missouri side. She has had to check the residents for drug use. They've had to turn back some of them because they just refuse. And one of the things that they didn't talk about during the presentation is that this is what they call a low barrier shelter. And what that means is that people can come in and they do not need to stop their drug use, their alcohol use, and some of those behaviors are going to continue, which my wife and other people have found out that poisons the whole place because I don't believe that you can get a success rate at that percentage with not denying a change in their lives. And the other question I have is that our faith community is ready to step up and be a part of this. And I don't think their numbers are correct. It's not 250, it's about 170. And I've never heard this term about unseen homeless because I see them in my neighborhood. We stop, and give them contributions, give them food, They're there. But we can take care of this, and we can do this cheaply, more effectively, in a more of a community effort. And I would love to see the cities of Johnson County do this and do it in a really effective way and use some real common sense behind it, because I see this thing rolling downhill. My oldest, would like to move back to Kansas City and maybe even take over our house when mom and dad can't climb the stairs anymore. But if her property taxes and everything, we're gonna sell our place. We're gone. We'll move into an apartment somewhere. But I really appreciate the approach that you all took tonight, because we want a solution, but we don't want a $10 million piece of pork that a bunch of people that are involved in that we just don't know. But thank you for letting me make some comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Wertz. Any other public comment? Okay, great. We'll move to consent agenda. Is there an item on the consent agenda council would like to remove? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Shu, we approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Consent agenda passes. No planning and zoning consent, no committee recommendations, no old business. Move to new business. New business item number 1. Consider a recommendation to implement master plan generation options. Gons.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Back in May 20th, Kiewit was here, did a presentation on the master plan, and they had several recommendations. Tonight I will concentrate on the generation side. Also have a PowerPoint. There it is. So quick story of the master plan. The first one was done in 2006. Mears Engineering was contracted to perform the master plan. The focus was the logistic park, and it was mainly power distribution, which is substations and distribution. Sorry, it's power delivery. 2017, an in-house master plan was done to make sure that we had sufficient infrastructure for the anticipated growth for the next 5 to 7 years. Based on the development over the past 2 or 3 years, we retain Kiewit to update the master plan, looking at generation, substation, distribution. For those not familiar with GRDA PPA, is a power purchase agreement. We enter into an agreement with Grand River Dam through KMEA back in 2005. The terms of the PPA is a capacity of 9 megawatts June through September, 6.75 megawatts October through May. The energy is 24/7, and it's a 21-year agreement. The cost, capacity about $10.45 for a kilowatt month, which is about $945,000 annually. The energy cost, which will vary based on fuel prices, has an average of $40 per megawatt hour plus a PCA. The annual energy cost is about $2.6 million. Then we pay a administration fee to KMEA, which is about $11,000 a month or $129,000 a year. The annual average cost is $3.7 million. So what are the advantages of PPA? The advantage of PPA is to reduce energy cost, hedge against energy prices, increases like fuel, or avoid upfront capital cost. On the table shown, you have the 1 year cost versus 25 years. As you will see, the capacity for 25 years about $23.6 million. So the master plan offers alternative to a GRDA PPA extension when it comes to paper capacity. Paper capacity is capacity you buy that at the end of the contract, you don't have it. Versus having some actual assets that will give you that capacity. So some of the generation options from the master plan, the resource SPP market, GRDA, within the Gardner CT1 upgrade, Gardner CT2 upgrade. They also contemplate a Titan 130, which is a gas turbine, battery storage, solar and battery storage, and solar photovoltaic. Due to the different costs and prices, including energy, the master plan shows a cost per kilowatt year. So this is the capacity component of a PPA, or a investment we will do on a existing asset. On the SPP market, you're talking about $355 per kilowatt year. The GRPPA is $462, which is the highest. Doing a Gardner CT1 upgrade will be about $146. Gardner CT2, $95. The Titan 130 is $261. Battery storage, $199. Solar plus battery, $122. And just a straight solar facility, $125. So looking at those options, if you look at the actual cost, we can see that the Gardner CT1 and Gardner CT2 upgrade has the lower cost for giving additional capacity. So in the master plan, the generation recommendations are the a inherent problem we have on the gas turbine, which is the 9-stage hook fit. There is after several years of operation, they will generate a crack on the stationary blades on the 9th stage. That crack can increase and can come loose and can damage the compressor assembly. So that's an inherent problem. That repair on Unit 2 was done last year. Then we have another problem that we have for several years, which is the lube oil coolers. We don't have enough cooling capacity during the summer to actually cool the oil temperatures. So after, let's say, a day of 95 degrees Fahrenheit, we can only run the unit for a couple of hours before it will trip on high temperature. Then we have a recommendation of upgrading Unit 2 from an LA model, which we have, to an R model. That will give us a 2.3 megawatt additional capacity. Then the upgrade of Unit 1, that will give us a 1.4. And then the other recommendation, put in a community solar in Gardner. Based on those recommendations, staff recommends to do an upgrade on Unit 2 from the R model to an R model, and increasing or upgrading the cooling system in 2025. Then authorize Unit 1 upgrade to an R model, do the cooling replacement, and also work on the repair of the 9-stage hook fit problem in 2026. And then do an evaluation if we're better off owning the facility or going through a PPA for a solar facility. Any questions?
Yeah.
A
lot of abbreviation, but
Council, I'll let you guys.
public comment? Yes. Public comment? Apologize.
And we can spend more in depth, but I didn't want to have a long presentation.
Sure, no, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Council.
Gons, so if we upgrade the turbines, that's 3.7 megawatts for it's about 1.5 million per megawatt.
But if that's 3.7, how much of that are we already allocating to like the power pool? We're not going to get the full 3.7, right?
Well, now we're providing about 3 megawatts, 13 megawatts per unit. So that will increase it to 15 and maybe a little more.
Okay, so that's only the delta for the increase.
Correct.
Okay, so then if we're getting that extra 3.7, but we're losing 9 with GRDA, we need we need 5.3, but the solar project is only a capacity of 3. So what are we doing about the other 2.3?
So the solar based on Kiewit master recommendation is 3, but there are some other, which I cannot go into detail because still under negotiation, they can actually supply 10, we can get 10 megawatts.
Okay.
But I cannot go into details because that's a presentation from KMEA in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And
so we could be able to make the difference through a solar PPA.
Okay. Is that cost, the capital expenditure for the solar, including what would take for like land acquisition? Because 10 megawatts is going to be a lot of land.
So the cost that was presented does not include the land acquisition.
So it's even higher.
Correct.
Where, location-wise, where would something, I mean,
We will have to be close to sub 3 or the new sub 4. So Waverly Road or Clare Road.
I mean, is there any kind of a opportunity lost cost? If it's developable land and it's not an exact term, but or not an exact number, but you know.
Sure, absolutely.
Developing land and putting solar on it that could be used for.
As long as we're close to the 2 substations, I mean, the opportunities somewhere.
So let me split this real quick. I don't have a problem with the upgrades to the combustion turbines. I do like the idea of evaluate alternatives to the solar.
I'm also in favor of that as well.
I'm kind of new to all this, so bear with me here. As we look at these upgrades and transition to other generation, is this to kind of shave off the peaks of demand?
So we're expecting, based on the master plan, about 1 megawatt per year for the next 20 years.
But are these generators don't run 24/7, 365?
No, they will run only when when the system cannot provide the generation.
Right. That's why I was asking. So this is for peak This is for peak load conditions.
Correct.
Like what we had a couple weeks ago.
Maybe 4 or 5 hours a year at the most.
But to be even more clear, this is for capacity,
Correct.
not for actual energy.
Right, I understand.
But with the capacity, you
I'm
can
looking
generate
at
more energy.
We have more families coming into town and more air conditioning and more this and that. When it's at 95 or 100 degrees, this is intended to get us over the hump on peak load generation versus having to go out on the market. Is that correct?
Correct.
No.
Well, you can get it through through SPP, you can get the energy.
That's more expensive.
But you need to have the capacity in order to get.
The 2 pieces. You've got.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
So, okay, what you're talking about with air conditioning, right? So in the summer, we're going to have this amount of usage, right? In the winter, it's going to be down here, right? We've got this big graph. That's why we want to improve. It's called load factor, but you want to increase.
I understand load factor.
Commercial, it runs 24/7, right? So that's the delta smaller. Okay, then whatever that peak is, there's an equation from the federal government that says you have to have so much of whatever that was as capacity.
Okay, so we have to have generation
Whether or not you
capacity.
ever use it.
Okay.
Okay, you have to have it. You have to have purchased the ability to use it. Okay, and then what you actually use, you'll have to buy off the market.
So this is more of a meeting regulations for generation capacity.
That's exactly
Yes.
what it is.
Okay, now I understand. Sorry, guys.
No, that's a very good question.
It's a Department of Energy requirement that, they don't want municipal utilities to be buying all of their energy without any ability to generate their own. So-
Now I understand, and this really relates to us being an electric utility and having
Yes.
generation capacity and DOE requirements. Is that correct?
Yeah, and just like, John said, we don't operate that often. Well, that's because SPP, Southwest Power Pool, tells us when to operate
Yeah.
for actual energy
Right.
on the grid.
Yeah. And SPP is almost always going to be a lower rate of generation or lower rate of purchase because they do it at scale.
Economy of scale.
Exactly, versus what, 2.5 million, 2.5 megawatt capacity in our generators. That's going to be a much higher cost per kilowatt hour.
Okay. So good.
So since we're talking about this, then help me understand. If we're going to do, let's say we do go down the path of doing solar, if we're not doing that for our own generation and we're doing it for capacity, but we're generating it anyway, is that?
Well, there,
It still goes on the grid.
It'll still go on the grid.
yeah.
We'll just sell it at a lower rate or whatever the.
Yeah.
So any power that we generate goes to the grid, and there's a price that is set by the SPP.
Right, because this kind of is the metric means for, hey, we need to have, this community needs more energy. Well, somebody's got to build something somewhere to generate that. But it doesn't have to be in your backyard,
Yeah.
right? So that this kind of tells people, hey, I need this much capacity. Hey, the overall market needs X. Somebody's got to do something about it, kind of like when we built, we didn't buy it, but we're a piece of dogwood not too many years ago now.
Yeah, and also there's a renewable energy threshold of capacity that has to be there. In past years, what we've done is we've actually had hydroelectric, and wind capacity that we bought from other entities. This here allows us to potentially bring that into house. So that's the difference.
So I think there's probably there's three different parts to this motion. They all sound like something I think we're in line with. So there's a motion.
If I may add something additional, I attended a Legacy Turbine Group conference. There were over 80 gas turbine vendors. They say they can do the upgrade. So the master plan is that it can be done. But I'd like to, the reason for the requesting authority is to go ahead and start looking if this is possible, if it's going to cost 2.3 or how much. But all this needs to be done with ahead of time to get the right parts, getting refurbished so we can do the upgrade. It's possible at the end of, 6 months of dealing, they tell us, no, it's going to cost $8 million. If that's the case, it wouldn't make sense. But the sooner we get this rolling, the actual upgrade, we will know the actual cost and how much we can get out of the gas turbines.
Yes, sir.
So as I look at these three recommendations, the first one is basically to bring the first unit up to current, to bring it current with other units of its type. Is that correct?
Basically, we have an LA model which produces, let's say, 13 megawatts. By making it a R model, you can get an additional 2.3 on unit 2.
And then the option 2 is unit 1, and that's to fix the compressor that could blow up because we got the 9th stage needing work.
So unit 1, again, is an LA, so you are upgrading it so it can put more power out.
Okay.
In addition to some problems we had over the past several years, like the coolers and the
Right. So
nice.
these are basically repaired just to keep functioning.
Basically repair the deficiencies and get more generation out.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Gons, just one last question here. I know we've spent some money over the last, well, for a while, but 5 years specifically on making sure that everything, when we did the realignment and the oil check and everything else so that we can run the way we are. Have we looked at the alternative of just replacing them with something new? I know that these are, 1955
Yes.
models?
So there is, one of the recommendations in the master plan was to replace it with a refurbished 40 megawatt unit. Basically, take the frame 5 out and put one turbine with capacity of 40 megawatts. The cost was high, like $66 million. Besides the cost, you will have to apply for a newer permit, so your emission will have to be lower, and it implies additional regulation that we presently do not have with the existing turbines. So that's the downside.
Okay.
All right, very good.
Thanks.
Do I hear a motion on new business item number 1?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Shoot, that we authorize Unit 2 upgrade to R model and cooler replacement in 2025. Number 2, we authorize Unit 1 upgrade to R model, cooler replacement, and 9th stage hook fit repair in 2026. And third, evaluate alternatives to the 9 megawatt PV community solar ownership versus PPA. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained?
Thank you.
Passes. Stated.
Thanks, Con.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Gons. That's a lot of stuff. New business item number 2 today. Consider a request for a waiver of the distance limitation and a special event permit to allow for the distribution of samples of cereal malt beverages, wine and spirits within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during tailgate tastings to be held September 7th, 2024 at Celebration Park.
This is related to our public hearing earlier. This is an event that the city is putting on at Celebration Park on September 7th. And this is just for the waiver of distance and the special event permit for the distribution of samples of cereal malt beverages, wines, and spirits at the park.
Council, any questions? Kind of already did it. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion, McNear, second, Eaton. We approve a waiver of the distance limitation and a special event permit to allow for the distribution of samples of cereal, malt beverages, wine, and spirits within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during a tailgate tasting event to be held September 7th, 2024 at Celebration Park. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? New business item 2 passes. New business item 3, consider authorizing the city administrator to execute an interfund loan from the electric fund to the airport fund. Mr. Wolf.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This agenda item and the next one are related to each other. They're both related to purchasing the Gardner property, which is adjacent to Gardner Municipal Airport. This project has been in our CIP for many years. It is currently FAA's one of their top priorities. And the reason for that is it's part of our runway protection zone. One issue that we're running into is the ultimate funding for this project is 10% local match, which will be the airport fund, and the remaining will be grant proceeds. The issue we're running into is the timing on those grant proceeds, where we're incurring the expense in 2024, but we're not expecting to receive the grant proceeds until near the end of 2025. The airport fund needs an infusion of cash in order to avoid violating Kansas cash law. The airport fund will also need a 2024 budget amendment in order to avoid violating Kansas budget law. It is staff's recommendation to make an interfund loan from the electric fund to the airport fund for the amount of $500,000 with a scheduled repayment date of December 31st, 2026 is the latest. We anticipate this will actually happen in 2025. And whenever we get the grant proceeds, we'll immediately pay back the loan in full. The loan will not negatively impact the electric utilities operations. And the public hearing for the budget amendment and consideration for approval would take place on September 3rd, 2024. The staff's recommendation that you authorize the interfund loan.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this? Council, do you have any questions?
You don't have the shakes or anything, do you, Mark?
No.
About this?
No. We've done something similar to this.
Yeah, we did.
For wastewater?
It was
A
wastewater.
couple years ago?
This airport for another land purchase.
Oh, it was the same thing. Okay, that's right.
All
Are you using December 31st, 2026, just to make sure we have a good window? Because it sounds like it'd be in by 2025, December 31st.
Yeah, there could be a delay in when we get the grant proceeds, so it's spilling over to 2026, and we just said December 31st to give us a little window.
Okay.
Yeah, I have confidence they'll repay the funds as soon as they are received. So.
Yeah, when we did it before, it was basically set up just like this.
Yep.
The only thing we did then, well, let me ask it this way. Is the 500,000 in the electric fund, are we pulling it out of an idle fund that would have been invested?
Yes, and last time we did have an interest component on the loan, and some of the kind of feedback I got last time was it didn't seem like it was a very strong interest to have that interest component with the loan. I'm expecting this to be paid back very quickly, and the reason we had the interest component on the last one was we didn't know exactly the timing on that. That was related to the Baker property, which was caught up in legal issues. So this one, we expect kind of a quick payback.
Okay, I'll leave that alone.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion Deaton, second McNair. We authorize the city administrator to execute an interfund loan from the electric fund to the airport fund in the principal amount of $500,000, where repayment is automatic and as such does not require future council action, with repayment date for the full principal loan amount on December 31st, 2026, or within 5 business days of the city of Gardner receiving AIP grant funds for the acquisition of the Gardner tract. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? New business 3 passes. New business 4. Is this Kellen or is this me? Consider authorizing the execution of a real property purchase and sale agreement with Mike and Debbie Gardner to acquire private property adjacent to the Gardner Municipal Airport.
I covered this during my last presentation. If you have some further questions, both Kellen and I are here to help answer your questions.
Kellen has your name on it, so if you'd like to stand up, you can. But.
If you have some questions, stand and answer.
Is there any public comment on the side? Let's see the audience. Any council questions, comments?
My only question is about the location of this land. I'm looking at the Gardner Municipal Airport footprint right now. Where is this specifically located?
South of the grass runway.
South, okay. So it's in this little area here that used to be the
Next to Old 56.
Yeah, I see it.
56.
Yeah, it's in the runway 3-5 runway protection zone,
All right.
just bordering US 56 to the south.
Yeah, I see.
Just
that.
west of the Baker.
Okay. Yeah, how many acres approximately on this?
I think it's 0.86 officially.
0.86 acres. All right. Oh, good seeing you, Mike.
I see the.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
good to see you.
Okay. I just needed to know because I wasn't sure where in this it was located. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yep. Any other comments? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second McNair. We authorize the execution of a real property purchase and sale agreement between Mike and Debbie Gardner and the city of Gardner to acquire private property adjacent to the Gardner Municipal Airport in the amount of $500,000. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? New business item number 4 passes. New business item number 5. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $3,700,000 to pay the cost of certain water system improvements, all pursuant to Charter Ordinance number 28 of the city of Gardner, Kansas. Madigan.
Earlier this evening, council approved on the consent agenda the progressive design contract for the Hillsdale Water Intake Structure Project. Short-term financing, we're planning to use cash from the water fund, but long-term, we're planning to issue bonds. The estimated total project cost right now is about $3.5 million for the project. In order for the city to reimburse itself from future bond proceeds for expenses related to the project, the city must formally approve its intent to do so. proposed ordinance fulfills the city's obligation. The staff's recommendation that you adopt the proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions or comments from the public? Any council questions or comments?
We'd already had this discussion in the previous meeting, so it's just the execution, so.
Yep. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Shoot. We adopt ordinance number 2808, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $3,700,000 to pay the cost of certain water system improvements, all pursuant to Charter Ordinance number 28 of the city of Gardner, Kansas. City Clerk.
Councilmember Wee.
Yes.
Councilmember Shute.
Yes.
Councilmember McNair.
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Dean.
Yes.
Ordinance number 2808 passes. New business item number 6. Consider a recommendation to purchase a 160 kilovolt circuit breaker for substation. I should probably read this. Circuit breaker for substation 4 CIP project EL 4005.
You said KV, nobody else would even know what you're talking about.
True.
So this item is related to the new substation number 4. Early this year, talking with different vendors and Evergy, they were indicating that the lead time for any electrical equipment for a substation had up to 3 years lead time. Based on that, we began the procurement purchase for equipment for substation 4. So on May 1st, 2024, we issue a invitation to bid for the purchase of a 161 kV circuit breaker as part of CIP 4005. We received 2 bids, one from NBA Power. Their bid was $660,000. And the second one from Siemens, $110,906. The lead time on NBA was 36 to 44 weeks. Siemens 90 to 100. That's about 2 years. Also, our consultants, they reviewed the bids and they recommended to go with Siemens based on their reputation. They have hundreds of breakers installed throughout the world, and also because they're low price. So we recommend going with Siemens for the purchase of the 161 circuit breaker.
Thank you, John. Any public comment?
One more, something additional. The same breaker, we purchased the same breaker in 2016 for 100, and so in 2016 we paid $55,000. So basically a double in about 8 years. And an MBA, they were look, is just 6 times, 12 times as much.
Is that because of the lead time? I mean, because
Yeah, the demand. There's a lot of data centers projects within the next 4 to 5 years. Then there's a lot of solar projects coming in. So there's a demand for electrical components for substations.
Is there any public comment on this item? Council, do you have any questions?
I'm just glad we have the forethought and the time to pay a sixth of a cost just to save, double the time. I'm glad we can eat that time.
Well, yeah, I think it's only going to get worse as more and more of these projects, and a lot of them are being caused by requirements that are at the the federal level for certain of these items, and that's what's really ramping up the demand. And then obviously the supply chain issues that have been around since the pandemic aren't exactly making the situation any better. Lower supply, higher demand means higher prices. So.
Well, Steve, being a little facetious here, you just can't go down to your local Home Depot and pick it
No,
up.
no, you can't.
Do we also suffer from the fact that we're only buying one? I'm not saying that we should buy more than one. I'm just, it seemed
We could buy 6 for the same price.
I'm saying that,
Man.
I think when we talked about the electrical plan, we talked about how they probably, for another turbine, they weren't even gonna probably talk to us, because we were only gonna buy one. Are we running into the same thing, or do you know?
The answer is no. It's not. If we buy two, it'll be 220,000. I don't think you'll get a discount.
Flip them.
Yeah.
There you go, it's 660,000.
Yeah.
We'll
get it out to you.
We can get one week.
There's the airport fund right there.
Yeah, that's. Okay. So is there a motion then?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. We authorize the city administrator to execute a contract with Siemens in the amount of $110,906, excluding sales tax and offloading charges for the purchase of one 161 kV circuit breaker for substation 4 CIP project EL-4005. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? New business item number 6 passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gons. Okay, we will move to council updates. Chief Walden?
I don't have anything tonight.
Okay. City Clerk, Renee?
I do not have anything.
Finance, Matt?
Nothing more tonight.
City Attorney? Gons?
Nothing tonight.
Jason?
Nothing for me.
Dave, Community Development?
Well, I had a long list of items that I came into the meeting with, but no, nothing tonight.
Kellen?
Nothing tonight.
Jim?
Nothing tonight.
Steve? McNair?
Nothing.
Shoot.
I made my points clear. I'm done.
Councilman Mark Ween?
I guess I'll ask the question. Center Street seems to be going along fairly well. I was quite happy to go through the intersection of Madison and not get jostled around in my car. So do we have, I'd heard rumor it was 2 months, but that seems rather, maybe that's right. I don't know.
The contract specified 2 months. They should be done depending on the striping subcontractors' availability. It's supposed to be this week. This week or next.
That's good.
Great.
Council Vice President?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Council President?
Nothing.
I have nothing either. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion Deaton, second McNair, we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Thank you, everyone.